So our next speaker is Akin Sawyerr. He's a co-founder of Agri-Fresh Produce Growers and Exporters Association from Nigeria. So he'll be talking about connecting production to growing markets in value-added agri-food chains. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for the organizers for inviting me here today. It's a great platform and a great opportunity to share our experiences, our thoughts, and our ideas. So I thank you. So, as the Chairman says, my name is Akin Sawyerr. I represent the Agricultural Fresh Produce Growers and Exporters Association of Nigeria, an association which was formed to address a fundamental problem in the value chain and the supply chain for the horticulture sector in a country that produces probably the largest amount, planned or otherwise, of horticultural produce in sub-Saharan Africa, but where anywhere between 55 or 72% of it actually goes to waste because of a lack of infrastructure and a lack of standards and a lack of connectivity from production to the market. So we have a mission which is stated up there, which is to make horticulture sustainable and an income-generating subsector for the Nigerian farmer, whether young or old, male or female, regardless of tribe. You know, how do we make it an income-generating sector for them? And to challenge the norms. So all the things that have been accepted as the way things should be done but are out of date and no longer working, to be fearless about saying, actually, you know, we need to make a change here. And overall to improve horticulture practices in Nigeria, which obviously would be a plus for Nigerian farmers, Nigerian industry to be able to export and to be able to show that what's being produced is acceptable in other countries, particularly in Europe, which is the closest biggest market outside of Nigeria itself. So our aim is to also become a private standards a regulatory authority of some sort, however long that takes, because we're setting standards and we want to make sure that those standards are put into policy and are adhered to and implemented properly. So what is on the screen now really just shows you some of the activities that we think will help us achieve that mission. So lobbying and advocacy, PPPs, public-private partnerships, because we recognize that actually in any industry that you want to grow and be significant in, you have to have both the public and the private sector working together, not just in agriculture. And we can't ignore that. And the balance of one to the other will shift over time. Market information collection, we've heard about big data earlier. You know, without information, without intelligence, you can't really make decisions that count. We have to gather information, we have to gather data on an ongoing basis, turn information into intelligence, and use that intelligence to make decisions that favor farmers. Organizing and supporting business fora. So farmers are generally not business people. How do we get them together to let them understand that there is a short, medium, and long-term benefit to understanding that this is commercial? It's not, you know, people buy because they feel they will benefit, whether they're an end user or end consumer or a middle person. I'm really just sensitizing farmers to understand that we're living in a fairly commercial world today. Development of standards to contribute towards the overall regulatory and statutory framework. We've had a lot of support from ACP. I know Guy talked earlier. A lot of support to the farmer group that we have to help them understand what standards they need to be striving to meet in order to have their produce more easily accepted in the marketplace, wherever that marketplace might be. At the end of the day, a marketplace is where the goods are exchanged for money, and they need money to put back into the farm. And informing and training stakeholders in production and marketing. And again, a lot it can be said for the support we've had from European organizations such as COLESPI. And of course, partnership with our R&D organizations. Again, if we're not constantly looking at what we've been doing and constantly trying to find out how things can be done better, then how can we improve? We become a little bit like a dinosaur. I'm going to skip over. Oops. Okay, so the organization was set up in 2011. We had a lot of support, political support from the former Minister for Agriculture, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina. He excited agriculture in Nigeria around that time and encouraged a lot of people to come in and become part of a change, really, a fundamental change which goes on till this day. It's a not-for-profit organization. We're non-governmental as of today. And we focus on promoting investment in the horticulture sector. And membership is open to everyone in the value chain. So it's not just farmers, because again, between the farm and the market, or the table, if you like, there are lots of other functions that need to be involved. And, you know, if we're not holding hands all the way across, nobody has arms that are long enough to reach where it needs to get to. You've got to hold hands with others. And in that chain, you'll find all sorts of other specialties. Government might be there, transporters might be there, regulatory experts may be there, consultants of various shapes and sizes, bankers, funders, people who are experts in packaging, people who are experts in marketing, you know, all kinds of people who do insurance. There are all kinds of parties that are involved. They may be working across other industries, but there are all sorts of specialisms involved between what the farmer produces and the table it gets to, or the funders who are ultimately the market. And we've tried to build a value chain that recognizes the importance of every single specialty, every single function. But our ultimate focus is to get money back to the farmer so that they can reinvest and have a good life and be encouraged to remain in that space. Anyone will tell you that it's much cheaper to retain an existing voter, an existing customer, than to go and look for a new one. So trying to recruit people into agriculture is a very expensive program or project. Trying to retain people within it, either within families or who are existing within that, is a much less expensive exercise. So earlier in the day, I heard about branding, I heard about agriculture not being so sexy and all of this. It's as important to make it attractive, because trying to get people out of suits onto the farm, photography onto the farm, banking onto the farm, is an expensive process. You have to sell it, and selling things costs you time and costs money. So retention within that space is a critical element of what we do. So just very quickly, we had 3 key initiatives in 2018. We're coming up to the end of the year. One was to set up to leverage technology and sort of bring everybody in the value chain together on one platform. And we've been able to bring together, out of our over 1,000 members, about 300 onto one electronic platform where they can communicate in an instant basis, share ideas, share information, share successes, share failures, share everything, basically, in a disciplined way. So, you know, this is our focus. This is what we want to talk about. This is what we want to do together. We don't want to stray outside these principles or guidelines, but when we're within it, we want to share everything, because we have to develop a culture of sharing. You know, having knowledge and not sharing it may be good for you. It's not good for the overall industry. If it's not good for the overall industry, it's ultimately not good for you, because at the end of the day, especially if you're talking about scale, if industry is affected, individuals will be affected. So we've got a very strong online platform. And on our platform, we've got everybody from different parts of the world who have an interest in the subject matter, not very different to the coloration of this room today. But we also have, you know, farmers who are on the ground, putting seed in the ground and harvesting. So, you know, we don't discriminate. Again, it's not ageist, it's not sexist, it's not tribalist, it's not racist. As long as you're in this space and you can help and contribute something, we want you there. So we have the online platform. The other initiative that we've set up this year is farmers markets. So in Nigeria, the largest supermarket chain has 19 branches in a country with 190 million people. Okay? Basically, that means that all the farmers go and knock on the door of that particular supermarket and basically get told, come back in a year, come back in 3 years. And when they do get to give an order, they don't get paid for 6 months. You know, how do they continue to farm? So what we decided to do was we were going to negotiate with supermarkets who struggle anyway with keeping their produce fresh to say, look, you know, we'll take a part of your car park, we'll take a part of your real estate, and we'll come in on a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, or sometime during the week. We'll pay you some money for the space, and the farmers will come, we'll put out canopies and tables and desks and payment systems so that they can come in and sell produce. It's good for the supermarket, it's good for the farmer. And the idea is to set up these pop-up farmers markets all across urban areas where people pay the right amount of money for the produce, and then be able to coordinate and network so that we can move platforms around, we can move produce around from one to the other, and we can give farmers access to markets that are able to pay, because that's the critical thing. You know, you sell a farmer gets forced to sell a pineapple in a rural area for $10, or 10 cents rather. It ends up as fruit juice 120 kilometers away in a hotel, sold for $10. Farmer gets nothing. Okay, so eventually, you know, he dies or gets put out of the system. Another one replaces him, and we all carry on eating, but nobody remembers the guy who was so easily expendable and so easily replaceable. So we set up these farmers markets to make sure that we could actually give access to farmers in urban areas where, you know, people are ready to pay. And then the third initiative that we started in 2018 was to set up a detailed plan to create a methodology for the physical movement of produce from farms to markets. And a market to us is, in an urban area, a hotel, a supermarket, a restaurant that's ready to pay the right amount of money for the produce because they're catering for high-end users in gentrified urban areas, but you know, cannot necessarily access the produce because it's too far away. So what we're doing is we've put out some sort of RFP to say, look, in a country like Nigeria, where you have over 200 flights a day crisscrossing the country, and thousands of vehicular movements across the country, carrying people looking for a better life or going to do business, but flying around with empty cargo bellies in the aeroplane because the business people just carry one bag, an overnight bag. How do we leverage that space? Because today, it takes 5 days to move a truck of tomatoes from Kano to Lagos. It's a 45-minute flight. In that 5 days, the shelf life is lost. So if the product has a shelf life of 15 days, you lose 5 days in shelf life, because, you know, that's cheaper apparently to move by truck. You move 60% of it turns to tomato paste at the bottom of the truck. Okay, you know, most of it's not sellable when it gets to destination, and there are no processors at destination to process, so it gets thrown away. So, you know, we're pretty upset about this, and we want to do something about it. So we're looking at putting this project together that says, you know, how can we set up aggregation centers? Where can we set up aggregation centers? How can we sweep the aggregation centers and put the produce onto airplanes and negotiate good rates with the flights? How do we set up distribution centers at the other end? Where the planes are landing, how can we sweep the distribution centers? How can we take the produce from the distribution centers to the supermarkets? So that's the thinking behind what we're doing, and we're trying to see how all of this can work, and then how can we set up a pipe that takes money back the other way, so that you can order from a supermarket in an urban area, you know, tomatoes, potatoes, whatever it is. You can order it. The order goes into the system. It's fairly standardized. You can see what size potato you want, how old it needs to be, so that the money goes back the other way. And we're not trying to cut out the middleman. We just want to make sure the farmer gets a little bit more for his effort than what he's getting today, which is, you know, guaranteed poverty going down the line. So that's essentially it. These are some of the principles: free sharing of information on the platform, disciplined value chain approach. I've talked about the setup of the pop-up farmers markets. We're involved in anywhere there's any sort of exhibition, farming exhibition going on. We try to get our farmers there, get represented, whether it's the King's there at the Dutch embassy, or it's a bank that's promoting something. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's a timetable for the farmers market so that the people can plan. And I guess, you know, we want to keep, you know, government involved. This is one picture from one of the farmers markets that we ran. The reason I put this here, that's the Minister for Agriculture today in Nigeria, Chief Audu Ogbe. He turned up unexpectedly at one of the farmers markets and took photographs with people. These are family days, they're family events, but actually, you know, the culture is that everybody gets together. It's not like a supermarket where you just go in, come out, pay, and go. So essentially, I'd like to thank you for your attention. A couple more pictures of loading the way it should be happening rather than the way it is now. I'll spare you the picture of how it is now. We're looking at the entire value chain using multimodal transport, rail, waterways, aircraft, whatever suits the product or point A to point B, and the money must go back the other way electronically. It can be done. So I thank you for listening and for your time, and I look forward to any questions you have later today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akin, for a very interesting presentation. Of course, the challenges that you are facing are quite huge, and what you are trying to do hopefully will help to address some of these challenges. As people say, if Nigeria succeeds, Africa will succeed. So I think the range, you know, the size of the problem and opportunities are quite big. So we're very excited about the possibilities.